flagged falling sales. The one bright spot, electric car sales, which went up over 60% last year. Well, for more on the latest on the global auto industry, I'm joined by Lauren Fix. She's an automotive expert known as the Car Coach. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with expectations beyond day one. What's creating the most buzz this year and why?
Well, as far as the auto show itself, one of the most important things that we saw was the car of the year, the truck of the year, and utility vehicle of the year, because that literally affects global sales for those vehicles. And Genesis G70 was the car of the year. The utility vehicle, it was the Hyundai Kona EV and the Kona. And, of course, truck was the Ram 1500. And those three winners, you will see global increase in sales. This is one of the few awards that actually equal sales, and that's why it's really important at the Detroit Auto Show for consumers to know why these people, 54 of us, who are all independent, come together to make these decisions. And there is a very complicated voting process, but it's a really independent process, which is important.
And are there any standout trends we should be on the lookout for, and also any big reveals we can expect?
Well, the biggest reveal I saw, besides, of course, ones that you had mentioned, is believe it or not, you think it's all electric. But here in the United States, it seems to be very polarizing. It's either electric vehicles, where you see lots of electric options coming out, or, which aren't selling that well here in the U.S., less than 2% of total sales last year of 17.3 million vehicles. Or the other direction, it's about performance. And that's where you see the Mustang GT500 coming out with over 700 horsepower. I mean, I want one of those in my garage, too. So when you're looking at some of the vehicles that are out there, you tend to see performance, you tend to see electric, and now we're also seeing a lot of course, SUVs. That's a big part of the show. But, when you're thinking, well, what kind of performance vehicles otherwise? Well, Toyota brought the Supra back, which we haven't seen in over 20 years. And that vehicle brought a lot of excitement to the show. So you get your energy, you might think, from electric, but we're getting our energy here in the U.S. from performance cars.
Now, obviously, challenges also a big talk of the town there. You have the tariffs, the trade disputes. Talk about some of the biggest concerns facing automakers this year.
Well, it's going to be increased sales. We're looking at an annual rate right now of about 16.9, which is obviously a drop from this year is 17.3. And the big concern for most manufacturers is they don't want to see a drop in sales, because obviously that's going to mean they're going to have to increase their incentives in order to get more product off the lot. But you have to think about this. Even in China, you can't keep escalating sales forever, and they never end. At some point, people have new vehicles, and there are new drivers coming on the road, but certainly in that case, they can't keep increasing forever. So at some point, there will be a dip. It will rise again when those people decide to buy new vehicles.
Now, obviously, the Detroit Auto Show used to be the place to be, but now you also have some of them losing ground. So some of these other large trade events in terms of reveals, you have CES, you have South by Southwest. So how does this year's Detroit show stack up against those other shows?
Well, Detroit is moving in 2020 to June, and I think that caused a lot of manufacturers to sort of take a second guess on whether they wanted to set up at that show, and we also lost a lot. Of course, that means there weren't a lot of invites for journalists, so there were less journalists there. But overall, I mean, even at the awards where I called the Car of the Year, I was quite impressed with how many people were in the audience. There was not an open seat. There wasn't a place to stand. Every seat, including the staircase, was completely full and up into the balconies. So we know it was a pretty good amount of people. But as far as the show itself, it was short in reveals. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they were down to suppliers, and the manufacturers had pretty much shown everything that they were going to show us. There was some pretty incredible product. Like the LC500 convertible, which they're calling a concept, which is probably going to be their production car. But overall, that was sort of the end of the day, and most of us, including myself, were gone by the afternoon, which was kind of sad, because part of the event for us as media is the ability to communicate with manufacturers and get some insight, and it's really hard to do that when half of us are gone by the end of the day.
I'm sure. Now, let's also look at some of the brands that were showing. Obviously, we saw some no-shows, including Mercedes-Benz, skipping the show. But last year, we also saw more startups playing a big role. So tell us about the sort of mix of companies that attended this year.
Well, this year, of course, we had your usual manufacturers. We also saw a lot of suppliers, such as Michelin. They had a huge tire display talking about their new technology, because you have to remember, the only thing that touches the ground, no matter what you're driving, whether it's an electric vehicle or a production car, is tires. And that contact patch is about the size of your fist. So when you have to really think about how important tires are, that's a huge industry. You saw Bosch set up there, and these are all manufacturers that supply autonomous type technology. So they are an important part of the industry, and so they filled up the the rest of the upper floor, which I think was really important.
And certainly, the tire is not usually something people automatically think about at some of these big shows. Thank you so much. Automotive expert Lauren Fix, also known as the car